I'm resident of Collinwood for YouTube, Joel Sains, joined by my buddy Patrick McCray, author of the Dark Shadows Day Book About, joined by my buddy Gordon Dymowski. We're here to talk about episode 250, another milestone episode of Dark Shadows. This is sort of it getting into the Maggie Evans where she's kidnapped and she's Josette, or at least Barnabas is trying to convince her she's Josette. But in this episode, she refers to herself as Maggie Evans, to keep remembering that she is Maggie Evans. You also get the construction of her coffin, of Josette's coffin, if you will, / Maggie Evans's coffin. And by the way, the voiceover introduction is done by Alexander Mulkey-Eisels. Really good job. What did you guys think of this episode?
Gordon?
Well, I used to like Dark Shadows until I rewatched this episode. Then I just realized that screw it. This is a bad show. No.
Juicy.
Yeah. I think it's very easy to forget when you look at Dark Shadows as a whole. There was actually a time when Barnabas was just was not the hero that people think he is. I think it's a very well written, well acted episode. I mean, essentially it's a three-hander. And I think, and it has that, usually episodes with a 0 or a 5 in a number, those are the Friday episodes. So you need that kind of, you can't just do a plain old cliffhanger. You got to really give them something to look forward to on Monday. Last time we talked about how it was a fascination with pens, and the big event was David's telling Roger, "Oh, I know you. I know Burke Devlin. Like, who cares?" I hope they finally found that pen. But in this one, it's literally Maggie is about to stake Barnabas, and he comes alive, and he looks at her. He starts baring his fangs, and this is where you get real Dark Shadows, because it's that meld of the high intensity acting, and you have people behaving in ways that are engaging. That this isn't. And also, let's be clear. Barnabas at this point is basically gaslighting her. And it's easy to forget that Barnabas wasn't always that even though, yes, he could be the tortured, I wish I weren't a vampire. Here, he's just like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm going to put her in a coffin next to me. So I think this is one of you can tell that Dark Shadows you can see now why people were starting to watch at this point.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think it's a terrific episode. It's one of Catherine Lee Scott's strongest. When she won the Saturn Award and was putting together, or was having assembled her highlight reel, this episode was one of the key episodes where she really restates and reaffirms her identity as Maggie Evans. That's a big deal. So I think that's really very strong. And, from the other end, this is, Dark Shadows gives you stuff you're not expecting. And a vampire kind of wringing his hands over every little aspect of a wedding to get it right. And all of the finery and so on and so forth with this, Hayseed Rube as his wedding planner, is just so touching. This is what makes Barnabas Barnabas. And, as much of a bad guy as he is, I think he's just, after everything he's been through in 1795, he's just had it. And if he has a second chance at this, even though it's probably a trap for me and Angelique, he's going to do everything right that he can. So I love that about it. And I think the other aspect that really gets me that I like is that it's a chance, especially with the rest of the series in mind. If you know the rest of the show, it is a chance to look on this story as if Barnabas is a cult deprogrammer. He is getting the chance to get love again. And, make no mistake, before Angelique did her Wuji, Josette was on her way to becoming a vampire willingly.
Yep.
So it's not like he's doing something that she hadn't already given consent for. Because as far as Barnabas knows, this is Josette.
Yeah.
This is a reincarnation, or this may be in the Matrix or something. This is Josette, and she's been mind wiped to think she's something else. I mean, if we can be convinced that that Anthony George is into someone other than Earl Holliman, and that Angelique was responsible for that, then anything's possible.
There's like in the earlier episodes of Barnabas when he first arrives too, there's an episode prior to 250 where he first officially meets Jason face to face. He's seen him in the cemetery, but this is where Jason first meets Barnabas, where Jason comes into the foyer and Barnabas is standing there. And he says, "Oh, haven't we met?" And Barnabas is like, "No." And he goes, "I'm Jason McGuire." And he goes, and Barnabas goes, "I'm Barnabas Collins." So now we have met. And Barnabas asks him, "How are you enjoying your stay here?" And Jason's like, "Well, how did you know I was staying here?" And he smirks at him. And really, there's a discussion about Barnabas's portrait in that episode as well. It's not the only discussion about Barnabas's portrait, but the reason I bring that up is Barnabas is doing his best publicly in front of other people not to call Elizabeth Naomi, not to call Roger Joshua. He's doing it more for himself. That way he doesn't slip up. But he almost sort of wants to. And the reminder for him is his portrait of when people keep going, that you look just like that guy in that portrait. Well, yeah, that was my ancestor, and so it's a really cool, when you see this episode, it makes me think of all the times he's interacted with the family, saying, I'm the descendant of that Barnabas Collins. Really, he's not necessarily saying it to just them. He's saying it to himself so he doesn't slip up. And here when he meets
so he doesn't say incestor.
Well,
yeah, that's Roger's job. Several ancestors are buried here.
Ancestors, yeah.
Yeah, with this episode, I really love John Carlin's reaction to building the coffin, and I love how Barnabas is standing over, like supervising the whole process. It's
sure.
Like, Jesus Christ. Like, you're really gonna stand there and supervise the construction of a coffin, you sick son of a.
What else are you gonna do when you spent 200 years in a coffin? If you want a coffin for your wife, you want to be sure she has a quality wood. That it's not that you use down and not that polyfiller one. You want to make sure that the hinges don't squeak. This is what kind of coffin aficionado are you, Jewel? Do you not know anything about the quality of coffins?
I know about
or just giving your wife quality wood.
Yes. Here's the thing too. I love how Barnabas says to Willie, I could make you appreciate this, and John Collins was like, "Nah, that's all right. I'm good." But yes, Willie's, and I love the interaction I really love the interaction between Kathleen Lee Scott and John Carlin in this episode. When Willie Loomis catches her behind the brick wall, and he grabs her, and he's talking to her. And he goes, "What do you think about this?" And she goes, "Oh, I love it." And he's like, "Yeah, you're not both. No, Maggie, I know you're trying to trick me." And she's begging for his help. Once, she wants out of there. Just John Carlin and Kathleen Lee Scott steal this episode really, really well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, it's a good ensemble piece all over. I mean, As Gordon said, it is a classic three-hander. And Dark Shadows doesn't give us enough of those. I think I always enjoy them. You know, these tight little ensemble pieces. And this is just a humdinger. It's a great piece.
Yeah, and I think at this point, Dark Shadows realized that in order to be successful, it's not about not everyone in the ensemble has to be in the episode. You know, when you look at episode 100, it's like you could tell that the writers are like, okay, we need to have a Roger moment. We need to have a Burke Devlin moment. We need to have a Victoria moment. We need to have a Carolyn moment. We need to have a David moment. And it felt a little too like trying to get the plot forward. You know, it was like, okay,
it's like
we got
Avengers movie.
What?
It's like a Marvel movie or something where they've got to, you know, keep all these people going.
Yeah. Whereas here it's like build and build. You go from one climax, which is my name is Maggie Evans, to the one that leads off the weekend. That weekend, like now we can just go straight to the next episode. But Maggie's about to stake him. She doesn't, and he discovers her.
Gordon, I think you made a really good point also. This might have been before we started, or it might have been just as we started, about episodes that, at least up to a certain point, end in 5 or 0. But if even though that numbering got off, just if you look on the wiki or something and notice what day of the week an episode was, because traditionally the weekend would have a very strong cliffhanger. And, you know, this is an example.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that this is also where the writing team is starting to realize how you plot out a week of Dark Shadows. and thank God there's no mention of bleeder valves or pens or anything, which is always good.
Of that. Oh, thank God. Yeah. Yeah.
What did you guys think of when Barnabas first came out of his coffin? He's mutilating the cattle.
Vampires got to eat.
Vampires got to eat. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's, you know, when you get out of a coffin, you're hungry. So, you know, you're gonna have some beef. It's what's for dinner.
Mm-hmm.
I really enjoyed a lot of the basement in this episode. How Barnabas is like so incensed about this wedding. He's so ready for it. And he's giving Willie all the instructions of what he's supposed to do, and that making Willie say what he's supposed to do. He wants nothing to go wrong, which is, you know, typical of a wedding, because weddings tend to go wrong. So he doesn't want this one to go wrong in the same sense. But I love how Catherine Lee Scott sneaks down. She doesn't try, her Maggie Evans does not try for the door, run out the house. She goes down into the basement, the back way, and watches the coffin be constructed, and she knows it's for her. What's you guys' favorite scene in this episode?
Oh boy, I think that my name is Maggie Evans part, you know, for me, yeah.
Yeah, because it's usually that's the end of an episode where it's like, oh, and by kicking it off with that scene, it then leads to, on some level, she's not only faking the, oh, I'm really Josette, but she's also starting to fight the fact that it would be probably easier for her, given how Barnabas has treated her, to think, oh yeah, I'm Josette, but it's that this is who I am, and she manages to fake her way through it. So yeah, I think that start scene is good because it just gets better from there.
I would agree. Yeah.
I like my favorite scene in this episode is seeing where Sean Carl is standing there. He's constructing the coffin, and Barnabas is like, "Don't you appreciate your work here? Can't you appreciate this?" And it's like, whatever you say.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know, it's like, well, Barnabas, you know, kind of, I guess it's not always the easiest. I gotta tell you, there are moments.
There's an episode of Dark Shadows though Maggie does say about her being herself on Maggie Evans, I believe that there's an episode, it's either before this or after this, where she slams the music box shut and says it, and that's one of my favorites. Really, really, really well done by Catherine Lee Scott. When you have a vampire who's trying to basically tell you you're somebody else and you know you're not, it's nice to see a character truly fight back. And we know how scared Willie is of Barnabas. I mean, we've seen Willie be beaten and smacked around by Barnabas and black and blue marks. We've seen Maggie be, Barnabas have his hand on her throat and have her arm behind her back. And so Barnabas isn't afraid to rough him up a bit, and it's a scary, scary thing, but it builds the fear of the character itself.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Which I really enjoy. I mean, Barnabas did nothing wrong. Just like the old Ducat. Anyway, I'm gonna go to hell. Anyway, really good episode. I like these milestone episodes we're doing. I also think that with the 3 characters they do in this episode, it's nice that we don't get a bunch of characters, because they do need to. This is where, again, they need to focus on Maggie being Maggie in a sense, and they do that in this episode, and they do it in later episodes where when why Maggie's going to go down into the basement and get locked up, and that's where we're going to get the introduction of one Sarah Collins, which is nice.
Yeah, It's coming.
Absolutely. Let me see. Is there anything you guys want to add about this episode? What happened?
Oh, I'm still here.
I know Patrick's video cut out.
Let's see. What can we say about this episode? If those of you are looking for a scene where Roger crushes a frosted glass brandy snifter, you're not going to find it here.
No, you're not.
I think too, you can really see why Dark Shadows took off with this episode, because it became, I think what that first year of the show needed was focus. Because those first 211 episodes were kind of all over the place. I mean, they're still figuring out what the show is, but then they figure, okay, the murder of Bill Malloy, okay, there's a ghost. We kind of feel something. Then there's the Phoenix, where it's like, okay, we kind of know where we're going. But once they had Barnabas, it was like, oh, okay, we know where the story goes. We can focus on this new character who is conflicted about who he is. He's also not quite the hero, but he's not quite the villain. And I think you can see the writing staff kind of going, okay, they're telling a different kind of vampire story for this time. Because usually most vampire movies are vampires out there, we got to go get them. There's panic in the city. Here it's very much like to mix a couple of metaphors. Part of it is very procedural, but part of it's also, you can tell they were by this point. I mean, I Am Legend, the novel, was out in 1954. So, and the Vincent Price version of the movie, Last Man on Earth, I think came out in 1962, 1963. So that would have been, at least they would have had some knowledge of that. I think for this in particular, they could have gone with Victoria or Carolyn as the Josette. The only reason why they went with Catherine Lee Scott was she had portrayed the ghost of Josette in an earlier episode. So it made sense. And you're also focusing on, she's not one of the people in the castle. She is, in theory, she's a townsperson. Yeah, I'm not diminishing her character. It's just that she's not the, in a weird way, in a way, she is kind of the commoner, for lack of a better term.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of class stuff going on in here. So, no, that observation is right on the money.
Mm-hmm.
I think also, too, it's nice to just have somebody else give them something to do. I mean, Victoria and Carolyn are good characters, but they have other stuff going on. I mean, they're trying to get rid of Jason McGuire. Victoria doesn't like Jason. Carolyn doesn't like Jason. So they have that to worry about. So here's Maggie Evans, like you said, who played the ghost of Josette. Well, let's give her something to do and have Barnabas try to convince her, well, let's use Josette.
The other thing, too, and I think this is something you see in Maggie Evans throughout this point, there's a real core to this character. There's a sense that there's a sense of like she knows who she is, and not just because of the episode, but that they're a very centered character. Like Victoria Winters is all kind of like, oh, I don't understand, and she's just here trying to figure out stuff to do. Like in many ways, Maggie Evans is kind of like Burke Devlin. You know, that kind of, they know who they are and they're focused. So you have Victoria, you know, Carolyn is like, you know, being kind of flighty and flirty, and you know, it's when she meets Buzz that she starts to settle down. Elizabeth Stoddard is the matriarch. So there's never really been, it makes sense that you have someone who we see as not just the working class person, but also someone who has a little bit more of a, she's not as vulnerable to, I would think, like, she doesn't have to worry about rich people problems. It's like she kind of feels like at this point, the fact that she's able to fight back and to say, no, my name is Maggie Evans, and to be able to be consistently kind of shows the force of the character's personality.
Very much so.
I think the biggest glimpse, too, for her personality is when you go back to those beginning episodes when she tells her father, Sam Evans, we'll lick them all, Pop. We'll lick them all. She's meeting the family. She's meeting the Collins family, Burke Devlin. She's willing to stand and fight.
Mm-hmm.
So she's always been a feisty character who's had her own attitude and not afraid to show it. So
right, and I think that's what makes her work really well in this scenario. Like if it had been Victoria, it would have been, oh, okay. Carolyn would have been like, okay, Barnabas, I'll be your bride, but I'm going to go hang out with Buzz because he's cooler.
Isn't that just sad?
Yeah, I mean, because it's such the obvious choice. You have to choose between Barnabas and Buzz. You're gonna go with Buzz. He's the smoke show of Dark Shadows.
Buzzabus. Call him Buzzabus.
Buzzabus, yeah. That's what they should have done. They should have made Buzz the vampire. Because then you've got the vampire, but then you have the cool factor. It would work.
He would be Nick from What We Do in the Shadows.
Right.
I secretly think Buzz was the inspiration for the entire plot for the movie The Lost Boys. Anyway,
why not? I'm sure Joel Schumacher's a fan of this.
No. I think Buzz was the inspiration for Quentin Tarantino to write From Dusk Till Dawn.
Yeah. God,
if Michael Hage had been in that,
mm-hmm.
What a great movie.
Yeah.
Michael Hage and Selma Hayek, I mean, the screen would just explode.
Actually, when you watch Lost Boys, the father of the vampires, he's very Barnabas-esque in a sense. He's very gentlemanly.
Now, wait, is that the psychiatrist that she's dating? Is that the Edward Herrmann character?
I forget whether he's a psychiatrist or not.
Or he's a teacher or something. We think he's a mild-mannered good guy.
Yeah, he comes across as this nice, mild-mannered man.
Yeah.
Like Barnabas. Yeah, go watch Lost Boys and Dark Shadows as well.
I've never seen Lost Boys, so
it's worth seeing. It is a vessel of a different era,
mm-hmm.
and it's worth watching for that.
Yeah. I love the grandfather's line at the end of the movie. I won't spoil it for Gordon.
It's a good line.
It is.
It's yeah, there are surprisingly.
Is the last line, "Where's my check? I need a drink"?
No, if only. No, he said that at the end of Tron. Yeah, it's the same actor. It's Bernard Hughes, and yeah, Bernard has things. Bernard has things.
He in like some detective show in like the 70s or 80s.
Yeah, Bernard Hughes was a TV and especially movie, but a TV staple for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
He was Mr. Merlin.
Okay, that's where I'm thinking it. That's where.
Yeah, and he was the old computer programmer in Tron.
Mm-hmm.
That the MCP attacks.
So our next episode, milestone episode, is episode 500. Let's see. What's today? Monday, I believe. So how's Wednesday night, guys?
My Wednesday is okay.
My Wednesday's okay as well.
I'll see you guys at 11 on Wednesday. Really good episode. I love how they use the three characters. We got Barnabas, we got Willie, we got Maggie Evans, who's saying she's Maggie Evans. The fact that she defies Barnabas to his face, to me, is the best moment, which is just not in this episode, but when she just slams the music box shut, when she's had enough of him, and you really see the character just, no, I'm not gonna be this Josette. You know, you can say whatever you want, that I'm this common girl. Yeah, I'd rather be this common girl than your wife. Though that line doesn't get said, it's the body language of Kathleen Scott that is saying it in every way, which is really, really cool. So, guys, thank you so much for doing these milestone episodes. They're a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Thank you for doing this project.
Mm-hmm.
It's fun, man. I love it. I watched the episode twice today. I also rewatched the movie The Circle of Iron. Really good.
It's a great movie.
I will say this, and I can't wait to bring up a point to Butch, that because me and him discussed something. We discussed an episode of Kung Fu. Mm-hmm. And I do want to bring up a point to Butch that I think he'll notice too. So, and I'll bring it up to you guys when we do the video Friday night. But I'll see you guys Wednesday night. I have to do Friday the 13th, the remake, tomorrow night. So,
okay.
Guys, have a good night. Take care.
Good night, all.
Take care.
Bye-bye.